Hello and welcome to our Affecting Destiny digital replay. My name is Cole. A few weeks ago, Bishop Tony and Pastor Kathy asked our team here at Destiny Fellowship to dig in the archives of Affecting Destiny and put together a weekly release of sessions from years past. So every Tuesday for the next 6 weeks, we're going to do just that. We'll be releasing some incredible teachings to you and trust that they will impact your life and your ministry. Today we have Dr. Dharius Daniels. He's teaching on the topic of adaptive leadership. He did this at Affecting Destiny Digital this year, and it was life-changing. So make sure you focus your next 30 minutes to be challenged and to grow.
What's up, everybody? I'm so glad to have this opportunity to connect with you today, man. I want to show some major love to Bishop Tony Miller and just his incredible team and the commitment to still do this conference. And I feel like the adjustment that they made is indicative of something I want to talk about today. I did not have intentions of having a talk like this if we were going to connect together in person, man. But I feel like it's almost pastorally irresponsible of me not to attempt to speak into what we're facing a little bit, and how I believe we can pull some leadership principles from the Bible to help us navigate it. So no matter what stage or space you're in, kind of in the church world, where you know, whether or not you envision yourself as a leader or not is really inconsequential. If you have influence over someone and you're influencing them toward their purposes or an organization's purposes, you're a leader. And so I feel like, in that sense, what I'm going to share is really, really important. And I want to spend just a few minutes, actually. I won't be long. I want to spend just a few minutes kind of talking about something that I feel like is really important. I want to talk from the subject of adaptive leadership. Adaptive leadership. Some time ago, I came across a really interesting book. And it was a book by a gentleman named Steve Addison. And it was called The Rise and Fall of Movements. And he talks about 5 stages that movements go through: birth, growth, maturity, decline, and decay. Birth, growth, maturity, decline, decay. Birth, growth, maturity, decline, decay. And what he argues is that many movements get to the decline and the decay stage a lot sooner than they have to, because they don't understand the importance of reinventing themselves during the maturity stage. Maturity is kind of when an organization is has peaked. And so the thought is the hardest group of people or the hardest organizations to change are people or organizations who think they're winning. And I really feel like when I thought about the times that we are in and the times that we're facing, how important and how relevant thinking through things this way is. Because now there's a forced reinvention upon the church. So as we reinvent or we die. And I really see some similarity between what we are facing with this pandemic and the persecution that the church was facing in the book of Acts that caused it to go from, watch this, an attractional church to a missional church. Like Jesus told them to go, but they gathered. And everybody was situated neatly in Jerusalem. And then the persecution that the church experienced caused believers to scatter. And when they scatter, the gospel began to spread like seed. And so I really feel like it's important, it's critical, and it's key for us to reimagine now what it means to be the church. Now, this pandemic will end, but things will never go back to the way that they were. I'm going to say that again. This pandemic will end, but things will never go back to the way that they were. And I think only time will tell what that looks like. But things are going to be different. I think there's going to be a greater appreciation for some people for the public gathering, a greater appreciation for the church and the privilege of being able to walk through doors. So I feel like there's going to be a surge in that sense. Then on the flip side, I feel like other people are, churches included, have been exposed to the vast mission field that exists beyond the four walls of our churches into the digital space. And so I think as we kind of think through this, it's important to be adaptive leaders and adaptive churches. And so I don't mean that we have I don't mean that we have to subject our churches to whatever changes are taking place in culture. But I do believe very simply this, that the greatest challenge for the church has never been cultural change. The greatest challenge for the church has been the failure to deal with that change effectively. I just said something right there. I'm going to say it again. The greatest challenge for the church has never been change. The greatest challenge for the church has been the failure to deal with that change effectively. An infatuation and a love for our methods more than God's mission. This is what Alan Hirsch says. I think it's so powerful. I think it's profound. Hirsch says this: God's church doesn't have a mission. God's mission has a church. What Hirsch is articulating is that the mission of God has existed prior to the existence of the church. That after Adam and Eve, God embarked on a mission to restore his creation back to his original intent. And he was doing it with Abraham, he was doing it with Isaac, he was doing it with Jacob, he was doing it with Joseph, he was doing it with Moses, he was doing it with Joshua, he was doing it through the kings, he was doing it through the prophets, and it consummates in Jesus, where God becomes the first missionary. God sends himself. He sends himself in a form that's consistent with the people he's trying to reach. He sends himself as a human. He doesn't send himself as an angel because he's not trying to reach angels. He sends himself as a human. And he sends himself, watch this, and he sends himself as a human, and he's so much human that when Jesus was being betrayed, Judas had to identify him with a kiss. Now you would think if God was on earth in human form, that he would be noticeable. But the fact that he had to be identified with a kiss says and suggests to all of us something that I feel like is very significant. He looked like everybody else. He was a missionary. And so what Hirsch argues is just like God the Father sent Jesus the Son, God the Father, Jesus the Son sent the Holy Spirit, and they send the church. So we've been sent as missionaries into this changing global world. And I really feel like it's important for us to wrap our hands around the fact that this pandemic called Corona has forced the church out of an attractional model. Come. And it has forced us into a missional model. So when I say things won't be normal, I don't think our buildings will be irrelevant. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not going there. I feel like there's going to be a surge in physical attendance once people feel safe. I'm not saying that at all, but I am saying that the days of being building centric are over. That's what I'm saying with great confidence. That God has forced us out of an attractional model to a missional model. In an attractional model, church is a place. In a missional model, church is people. In an attractional model, it's inside-out evangelism. In a missional model, it's outside-in evangelism. In an attractional model, it's missions as a program. In a missional model, it's missions as a purpose. Attractional, weekend is an event. Missional, weekend is an assembly. We're still the church right now. We just aren't gathering physically. In an attractional model, members are consumers. Church is a vendor of religious services. I come to church just like I come to a restaurant, a mall. You give me my date, my weekly dose of inspiration, and then I go on about my life. In a missional model, members are missionaries. And that's the way we have to think. And adaptive leaders have to think this way. And this is what I really want to lean into. I'm going to take just a few minutes here. Because adaptive leaders adapt. And adaptive leaders not only have to adapt, listen to this, in the way that they lead, but you also have to adapt as it relates to who you lead with. Did you hear what I just said? Yeah. In times that require you to adapt, you have to have adaptable people. I'm going to say that again. In times, this is scaring some of y'all, isn't it? I'm sorry. In times where you have to adapt, you have to have adaptable teams. Here's my question. This will be my question to senior pastors. If buildings are out of which they aren't, but if buildings were out of the picture totally, what would your staff look like? It probably wouldn't look the same, right? You may not need a janitor. What does secretarial work look like? Think about that. For those of us who do multi-site, how many worship leaders do you need? How many bands do you need? It's interesting, right? So I feel like every leader has to contextualize what this looks like for them. But I feel like this is going to be the most significant challenge for leaders. It's not going to be when the buildings are open and people feel safe, the people are coming back. We know that's the case. I think there's going to be a greater appreciation for the physical gathering once all of this subsides, whenever it subsides. So I do feel very, very strongly about that. But I do not feel like church will ever, well, at least in our lifetime, that it will be done the way it's been done previously. And I'm not quite sure that's what God wants. When Israel was dealing with some plagues, when Israel was dealing with its plagues, when Egypt was dealing with its plagues, Egypt's plagues was Israel's miracle. Egypt's plagues was Israel's miracles. It got Israel not just out of Egypt, it got Israel out of some idolatry. How did they know how to make a golden calf? They've been exposed to them in Egypt. And so I feel like during this time, there's been some exposure in that regard also of some areas that God may be wanting us to address. All right. So adaptive leaders not only adjust how they lead, they adjust who they lead with. So what's going to be a key and critical leadership skill moving forward as you see what church looks like for us, for leaders on every level, is to get the team building skill right. That's going to be an essential skill that we got to get right. The culture of the kingdom is a culture of collaboration. It's team ministry. You don't go as far as your dream, you go as far as your team. Before Jesus built a movement, he selected a team. Before, the first thing he did is he selected a team. And great teams begin with good picks. It's hard to have a good team with bad picks. Just like any other sport, we can't play well if we're drafting bad. So the strength of what we lead is tied and tethered to our ability to discover, develop, and deploy others. This must be done well, and it must be done intentionally, and this discovery process is uniquely important. So there are a couple of questions that I'd like to kind of throw out to you that I think may be helpful as we attempt to kind of navigate these uncharted waters. And it's this: what do I need? So 2 questions. The questions are contextual and situational. Here it is. Context. What do I need here? In your part of the country, in your part of the world, what do I need here? Right? And then, in other words, where are we geographically? Where are we organizationally? What's our makeup organizationally? What is the culture like here geographically? Hence, what do we need here? Then also it's situational. So it's contextual and it's situational. Situational is, what do we need now? Like, so as things change and settle, a leader's got to ask herself that question. What do I need now? What do I need here? And what do I need now to do what God's called me to do? Those are very courageous questions. And a leader's unwillingness or inability to ask and answer those questions is going to determine his or her effectiveness in these uncertain times that we live in. Because adaptive leaders don't just look at, do I need to change the way I'm leading? They also have to look at, do I need to change or adjust who I'm leading with? And so I feel like developing an avatar of some sort is really important. And by avatar, I mean really being able to chart out and craft out a way to answer those two questions. What do we need here and what do we need now? In Psalm 78:72, David put it, the Bible puts it this way. It says, and David shepherded them with integrity of heart and with skillful hands. So heart and hands are the two criteria that the writer points out that David used to lead Israel. Good heart, good hands. Good heart, good hands. Character and competence. So those are the two areas I would ask those two questions. What do I need here in terms of character? And then what do I need now in terms of character? And then what do I need here in terms of competence? And then what do I need now in terms of competence? And I think a leader's ability and willingness to answer those questions are going to be really key and critical. So for us at our church, what we did years ago is we mapped out what that looks like. What this pandemic has done is it's taught me at least, that we have not been as missional as we've been forced to be. But our church was birthed with a missional understanding. So these are kinds of questions that we've always been asking all throughout our ministry. And we came up with this avatar that has really 4 components that I'll just share with you that describe what we have to have in terms of leaders. And what we feel like is these 4 traits, they transcend for us. They transcend context. By that I mean whether it's in Orlando or New Jersey or wherever. These 4 traits are these 4 traits, and they transcend time. These 4 traits were important when we started. These 4 traits are important now because we believe the traits are portable. They're missional. So here they are. So number 1, the first one is a leader for us is a participator. So we believe before something can be transmitted, it's got to be embodied. And the difference between kingdom leadership and cultural leadership, one of the differences is a kingdom leader should be able to say, don't just do what I say, do what I do. Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. So that's the difference between just leading in culture and leading in the kingdom. The mandate for a kingdom leader is not just what I do. It's not just my activity, it's my example. Who I am is just as important as what I do. So Paul says to Corinth, follow me. I'm not Jesus, but if you're looking for an example on how to follow him, follow me. And so for us, we're very clear on that modeling is an essential aspect of our assignment. So pre-corona, we need our leaders to be participators. They go first, they model, they're examples. And post-corona, we'll need our leaders to be participators. They go first, they model, they are examples. And so it's really simple. If everyone in my church served like me, gave like me, managed conflict like me, what kind of church will my church be? If everyone in my church gave like me, served like me, managed conflict like me, what kind of church would my church be? And so we believe leaders should be participators. Number 2, we believe leaders should be navigators. Good people have good intentions, but John Maxwell says this, good people have good intentions, but good leaders are intentional. Kingdom leaders don't just communicate, they navigate. See, cultural leaders take responsibility for cultural leaders become preoccupied with tasks. Kingdom leaders take responsibility for outcomes. The word Jesus used to describe outcomes is fruitfulness. And so it takes intentionality to produce a certain kind of fruit, to take outcomes seriously. Like Jesus got upset. He cursed a tree that had leaves but no fruit. The idea is it was false marketing. It was instilling false hope into people. And that's not what Jesus wants of his church. He doesn't want churches to have leaves with no fruit, telling people, come here and we can help you. And we can't, because we represent him. So what does it mean? It means that leaders must be able to set direction. Not just this is where we're going, but this is how we're getting there. See the difference there? This is where we're going. Okay, that's great, but how are we getting there? A leader has to do more, has to be able to do more than inspire. They got to be able to direct. Inspiration is like putting gas in the car. But you can have a full tank of gas and want to go somewhere. If you don't have a map, you're in trouble. And so leaders are navigators. They not only tell people, this is where we're going and this is why we need to go there. They also chart the path. They navigate it. They're a GPS system. They say, hey, these are the steps we're going to take to actually get there. So what we believe that's portable. Pre-corona, a leader has to be a navigator. Post-corona, a leader has to be a navigator. Number 3, an evaluator. An evaluator. We can only get to where we're going if we honestly assess where we are. We can only get to where we're going if we honestly assess where we are. In Proverbs 27:23, it says, be sure to know the condition of your flocks. Give careful attention to your herds. This is what an evaluator asks. Where are we? How are we? And what do we need to do about it? Where are we? How are we? And what do we need to do about it? Where are we? How are we? And what do we need to do about it? That evaluation is so, the proverb says, be sure you know the condition of your flocks. That you have to take responsibility to be inquisitive, to inspect, to see the condition of the teams you're leading and the people you're responsible for. That we're not just waiting for that to show up by osmosis. We're intentional about that. Where are we? How are we? And what we need to do. The evaluation part, that's the part I found with leaders that's really the most challenging. Navigation is challenging, but the evaluated part is really the most challenging for leaders. And it's because that's the part that really requires emotional health. Because it requires that you not attached your sense of self to how well things are going. Because if how I feel about me is based on how things are going with what I'm leading, then it's going to inhibit my ability to look at it objectively. I'm going to be too pessimistic when things go wrong. I'm going to be too optimistic when things go well. So in order to stay balanced, there needs to be health. You need to be able to assess the job you're doing and the state of the team without connecting that all to your sense of worth, the sense of failure, of whether or not I feel good about me. And I feel like a leader's ability to get over that will help him be able to evaluate it more effectively. You know you're a good evaluator when you look at something where you're able to look at something that's not going well and say it sucks without feeling like you suck. I don't even know if you're supposed to say that in church, but I'm past that a little bit. So yeah. So I feel like that piece is really key and important. And then the last, not least, this is the fourth one is that. So we got participator, we got navigator, we got evaluator, and the fourth is protector. Protector. One of the images the Bible uses to describe a leader is a shepherd. And one of the roles of a shepherd is to protect. And a shepherd must protect, a leader must protect the vision from enemies and the enemy. So like imagery in the Old Testament of a shepherd is rod and staff. I did this series. I didn't get to finish it. I'm going to finish it later. I started this series called Oil Change, and it was a series on the anointing a couple months ago. And one of the things that I did is I did some research on the 23rd Psalm. And I had been doing some flawed exegesis of that text, because the whole time David he's using shepherd sheep imagery. I would come out of shepherd sheep imagery during different parts of the text. So when David talked about he anoints my head with oil, I didn't know he was still referring to shepherd sheep imagery till I did some research. And then one of the things that I realized is that shepherds put oil on the heads of sheep to protect sheep. Sheep sometimes were banging their heads. It's so much like they would bang their heads against each other, and it would or bang their heads against something, and the oil would be salve. It would ward off snake bites. It would stop worms from getting in mucous membranes, but it was protective. So shepherds protect. Then you got rod and staff for the sheep to hook them, rods to fight off wolves. And leaders protect. They protect the vision. And in order to do that, there are three dynamics that many teams have to manage. Most teams in churches don't manage these well. They are cause. We say community, it's really what Alan Hirsch would call communitas, because it's a community that's formed by a cause. So you got cause, community, and then corporate. So whether or not a leader is really able to protect the vision is based on whether or not they can manage those three dynamics. So when I say cause, that's a mission, right? That's a mission. So the cause, our church has a mission, that's our cause. But as a result of that cause, it's going to create community. So people are going to meet that would have never met had it not been for the mission of our church. Those people are going to form a relationship with each other. That's going to be community, but it's communitas, because it's like the cause is what is creating a community. And then you got corporate, where we have to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That's one part of it. Two, business is just seen as a bad word, and it shouldn't be. Exploitation is bad, business isn't. So it's like, I just think business is doing business right is loving people well. So it's like, do a background check on youth workers. That's not anti-spiritual. We love people well. We love the youth well. So we will love the volunteers well. So we want to do what we need to do to protect ourselves there. We get snow in New Jersey, so put put salt out, just because we want to love people well. We don't want people to slip and fall. Then we don't want somebody to fall and be seriously injured. Then we don't want somebody to fake fall and not be seriously injured, fake it, and then sue the church, and to put in jeopardy the work that God's doing because we're negligent. So all of those things have to be managed. This is what happens with most people. They put the community before the cause. That's what happens. The relationships get so tight that people are unwilling to hold each other accountable. They're unwilling to address what needs to be addressed in order to make sure that the mission advances. So they put a relationship above a vision. And we really feel like if people can manage that well, they would flip it and they would say, if we're in relationship, you wouldn't put me in a position where you would ask me not to do a job I committed to do because you feel like that's not going to work out well for you. So that's an avatar. And for me, having something like that, expressions are going to change, roles are going to change, sometimes positions are going to change. I mentioned some of that. But when it comes to leaders and leadership, if you establish whatever your criteria is for you, ours is fourfold, that avatar becomes the equivalent of what Paul gave Timothy when he said, hey, when you're looking for a deacon, it's this. When you're looking for an elder, it's this. When you're looking for a bishop, it's this. Deacon's wife, it's this. He wasn't saying everybody that has these characteristics fit this role, but don't put anybody in this role who don't have these characteristics. So I feel like that is key and critical, and that will help any leader adapt to the present age that God's called you to serve and faithfully serve it. Because serving this present age is your calling and my calling to fulfill. And you've been graced, equipped, called, and anointed to do it during these uncertain times. And so my prayer is we all embrace the anointing to adapt. Bishop, thank you for this opportunity to contribute. Thank you guys for listening. Take care. God bless.
We hope this session has provided you pages of notes, new ideas, and fresh courage to lead in your realm of influence. Now, before we go today, I want to let you know of something very important that's happening here at Destiny Fellowship. On August 20th, Bishop and the entire fellowship are hosting an event called a Leaders One Day. This year, that one day is happening online only. Now, here's the deal. Wherever you're at in the country, this event is completely free and it's open to your entire team. So make sure you let us know by pre-registering. You can do that by texting the word 1 to 405-655-5010. That's a pre-registration. Once the event's open for registration, we will text you on that number to let you know. Now, next week, we'll be right back here for one of our vault releases of Affecting Destiny.